The void of space stretches cold and indifferent, yet in the darkness, the screams of worlds echo. Planets burn under the relentless expansion of the Tau, their drones scanning, their fire warriors executing precise sweeps, and ethereal advisors probing the minds of humans with chilling efficiency. As an Inquisitor, I am invisible, a shadow among the stars, orchestrating hesitation, guiding whispers of defiance, and manipulating royalties to preserve lives in a war where obedience itself is a weapon. Would you survive this nightmare if every choice, every hesitation, carried the weight of countless worlds? Every decision is a battle. Every life touched carries consequence. In this war, survival demands strategy, moral courage, and the ability to wield subtlety as fiercely as any blade. Before we dive into the fires of rebellion, remember, like, share, and subscribe, and witness a story where human will stand against the relentless precision of the greater good. The Inquisitor arrives in the contested sector, surveying the expansion of the Tau and the psychological drain of human settlements. Subtle acts of defiance are identified, and the moral stakes of influencing civilian and military decisions are introduced. Coordinated interventions begin, guiding human minds to doubt and hesitation. Small, strategic disruptions ripple across supply lines, communication networks, and patrols, slowing the greater good. The first sparks of rebellion emerge, and the Inquisitor weighs each ethical decision. The consequences of influencing human choice become apparent. Civilians suffer anxiety, soldiers falter, and the acolytes struggle with the burden of manipulation. The Inquisitor reflects on the balance between survival and morality. While the Tau respond with countermeasures, human defiance and subtle sabotage compound, forcing the Tau into defensive maneuvers. Networks of hesitation solidify into a fragile but effective resistance. Supply lines stagger, patrols falter, and minor uprisings test the greater good's precision. The Inquisitor coordinates the sector's response while grappling with moral weight. Coordinated, decisive actions converge across multiple systems. Human hesitation and rebellion slow the Tau's expansion. Survival is achieved not through open combat but via influence, moral courage, and careful orchestration. The Inquisitor reflects on the precarious balance of power, human agency, and the enduring spark of resistance. The void is silent, yet it trembles with the pulse of countless lives under the shadow of the greater good. From the command deck of my cloaked frigate, I watch planets burn with quiet precision drones sweeping industrial zones, fire warriors marching in flawless formations, and ethereal advisors probing the very minds of the humans who dwell there. The Tau expand, relentlessly, their vision absolute, their strategy unyielding, and yet, in the fractures of obedience, I see possibility. I am an Inquisitor, invisible yet present, manipulating hesitation, guiding whispers of defiance, and orchestrating choices without leaving a trace. Each decision is a blade, each hesitation a shield. Survival is not found in open combat but in subtlety, patience, and the careful orchestration of human will. The moral weight presses down, heavy and unyielding. Every life touched carries consequence. Every act of influence must be measured, or the cost will be intolerable. Lieutenant Merrick reports via VoxLink. Small acts of hesitation among administrators and patrols. Minor failures in supply lines, and whispered doubts spreading through civilian sectors. These flickers are fragile, yet they form a lattice of opportunity. The Tau's reliance on voluntary obedience is their weakness. If guided carefully, human unpredictability can become a weapon sharper than any bolter. Lyra's psychic presence hums alongside me, mapping hesitation, courage, and fear. The Tau are disciplined, precise, but they cannot predict the unpredictable. Each spark of defiance, each faltering thought, creates opportunity. I nod, knowing the truth of her words. The challenge is not merely tactical, it is moral, psychological, and absolute. Across the sector, minor acts of defiance begin to coalesce. Civilians question orders, human collaborators hesitate, and minor sabotage disrupts otherwise flawless systems. These acts are invisible to the enemy, yet together they form a network capable of slowing expansion. The greater good meets hesitation. It cannot fully suppress. For the first time, opportunity glimmers amidst relentless alien precision. The stars beyond the viewport are indifferent, but the sector is alive with tension. Every decision I make, every intervention I orchestrate, has consequences that ripple across worlds. Survival depends on patience, subtlety, and moral courage. The Tau may expand relentlessly, but in the shadows of hesitation and human choice, the seeds of resistance endure. The first whispers of defiance had begun to take root across the sector. Supply chains faltered not from open attack, but from hesitation, clerks delaying shipments, minor operators questioning orders, and patrols pausing at critical junctions. Each faltering heartbeat of doubt amplified into a ripple across multiple worlds. The Tau, precise and disciplined, could not yet identify the cause. Their reliance on the obedience of others had become a vulnerability, and every small act of human unpredictability was a weapon in my hands. I moved to the command deck, eyes fixed on the data slate streams mapping human hesitation. Each node represented a choice, a decision swayed, a doubt instilled. Lyra's psychic awareness stretched across the sector, detecting subtle changes in thought and will. Focus on the fulcrums, she whispered. Moments where hesitation can cascade. The greater the uncertainty, the greater the advantage. Lieutenant Merrick's reports confirmed the spread of subtle resistance. Civilians hesitated to provide critical information to Tau forces. Administrators delayed reports. Minor insurgent cells emerged with whispered encouragements. These were not acts of heroism, they were calculated, invisible, and effective. By amplifying doubt and guiding choice, the sector itself became a battlefield of minds rather than bolter fire. Even among my acolytes, the weight of these operations pressed heavily. Each action required judgment. Too aggressive, and exposure would bring immediate reprisals. Too subtle, and the momentum would be lost. Garen's hand rested over his last pistol as he considered the delicate balance between risk and influence. Every hesitation counts, I reminded him. Our goal is survival, not open confrontation. Yet even the smallest decision carries the weight of countless lives. Night fell across the sector's planets, casting shadowed quiet over fragile defiance. The Tau continued their precise expansions, yet cracks began to appear in their machinery of obedience. Each faltering decision, each delayed command, each hesitant thought became an instrument of resistance. In the vast emptiness of space, we had created a battlefield without bullets, a war of choice, conscience, and subtlety. The moral burden is relentless. Civilians, soldiers, acolytes, they all carry the consequences of these manipulations. Survival is never simple. Yet as the network of hesitation spreads and human unpredictability asserts itself, a fragile hope emerges. In a galaxy dominated by absolute order and relentless expansion, even a spark of defiance can alter the course of worlds. And in those shadows, the seeds of resistance endure. The sector's pattern of hesitation had begun to solidify into a fragile web, invisible to the Tau yet potent in its effect. Minor delays in logistics, faltering patrols, and whispered doubts among human operators were no longer isolated incidents. They had become a coordinated network, a battlefield fought through subtlety rather than bolter fire. Each node of hesitation could tip the balance of an entire system, and the responsibility of guiding these choices weighed heavily upon me. From the cloaked frigate's shadowed bridge, I monitored planetary grids, supply lines, and administrative nodes. Lyra's psychic awareness traced hesitation like threads of light, highlighting where intervention could create maximum impact. "Focus on the weak links," she murmured, her voice a hum against the backdrop of distant stars. Each faltering choice, each delay, can cascade, amplify it, guide it. But tread carefully, the cost of exposure is catastrophic. Lieutenant Merrick relayed reports of emerging opportunities. Administrators questioned orders at critical junctures. Patrols hesitated at strategic choke points. Civilians subtly obstructed the Tau's logistical movements. Each act, minor in isolation, compounded across systems to slow the relentless expansion of the greater good. It was a war waged through the unpredictable courage and doubt of humanity itself, a war without direct confrontation, yet no less lethal in its implications. The ethical burden of manipulation pressed upon my conscience. Every hesitation we orchestrated risked consequences for the innocent. Each human choice we influenced carried moral weight, and yet, inaction could mean the unopposed expansion of the Tau. Garen's voice broke through the tense quiet. "We are shaping lives in ways they cannot see. Are we guiding them, or merely using them?" I did not answer immediately, knowing that in this war of minds, the line between guidance and exploitation was razor thin. Night fell across the sector, yet the web of hesitation pulsed with life. Minor acts of rebellion, subtle sabotage, and carefully guided doubt disrupted Tau operations. The Fire Warriors' patrols hesitated. Supply convoys were delayed. Minor insurgencies, coordinated but invisible, began to emerge. The greater good, precise and disciplined, faced forces it could not predict. Human choice amplified by strategy, subtlety, and moral courage. From the command deck, I reflected on the delicate balance of our operation. The Tau may be patient, calculating, and methodical, but they cannot anticipate the unpredictable hesitation, moral doubt, and courage in the face of authority. The web of resistance was fragile, yet potent. Survival demanded precision, moral clarity, and the relentless guidance of human choice in the shadows of alien expansion. In these invisible conflicts, the sector's fate was being determined not by firepower, but by conscience, hesitation, and the unpredictable strength of humanity. The web of hesitation spread like a living organism, each faltering heartbeat of human doubt amplifying across multiple systems. Fire Warrior patrols lingered where obedience demanded speed. Administrators paused where efficiency once ruled, and civilian operators faltered at the smallest provocations. Each minor disruption was invisible to the Tau but became a weapon in our hands, an unseen resistance shaping the battlefield without firing a single shot. I moved across the command deck, eyes tracing the sector's lattice of subtle defiance. Lyra's psychic presence pulsed alongside my own awareness, detecting points of instability and opportunity. The Tau rely on absolute order, she whispered. Even small hesitations cascade. Amplify them strategically. But beware, one exposed act can unravel everything. Lieutenant Merrick's updates arrived in rapid succession. A convoy delayed at a minor junction. A patrol rerouted due to hesitation. And whispered defiance in a civilian data hub that disrupted command signals. These were not battles in the traditional sense. They were battles of thought, choice, and moral courage. Yet their impact was undeniable. The Tau, precise and disciplined, could not fully anticipate the ripple effects of human unpredictability. The moral burden of guiding these choices pressed heavily. Each act of manipulation, though subtle, risked real harm to innocents and collaborators alike. Our success depended not on force, but on steering decisions without detection. Garen's eyes reflected concern as he spoke. Every hesitation we encourage carries consequences. Are we saving them or merely using them as instruments? I met his gaze without flinching. In this war, survival required both moral clarity and calculated intervention. The line between guidance and manipulation was the very edge of our existence. Across the sector, coordinated interventions began to coalesce. Supply networks staggered under subtle sabotage. Patrols delayed their routes, and minor human uprisings disrupted Tau logistics. The greater good responded with precision, yet it could not fully suppress the invisible tide of hesitation. We were bending the flow of expansion without a single open confrontation, proving that human unpredictability remained the most potent weapon in the galaxy. In the dim glow of starlight through the frigate's viewport, I considered the delicate balance of survival. The Tau were relentless, disciplined, and methodical, yet human hesitation, moral courage, and subtle defiance had begun to dictate the tempo of conflict. Each faltering decision, each delayed command, each whisper of doubt was a strike against their expansion. And in this invisible battlefield of minds, the seeds of enduring resistance were quietly, inexorably taking root. The consequences of guiding human choice began to reveal themselves with stark clarity. Civilians who hesitated under the Tau's gaze suffered anxiety. Soldiers faltered at critical moments. Acolytes carried the weight of every manipulated decision. Each act of subtle defiance was a victory, yet every ripple of hesitation carried real cost. Survival demanded strategy, but morality demanded awareness of the lives intertwined with each action. From the shadowed command deck, I traced the web we had woven. Lyra's psychic senses highlighted points of tension, nodes where human will was bending under pressure yet refusing to break. Each hesitation carries its own shadow, she said softly. Do not underestimate the consequences. You are guiding them. Yes, but each choice leaves a mark. I nodded, knowing the truth in her words. Strategy and conscience were inseparable. The cost of failure was unbearable. Yet inaction could mean the unchallenged expansion of the Tau. Lieutenant Merrick relayed updates from multiple systems. A supply hub stalled under bureaucratic hesitation. A minor insurrection delayed patrols, and administrators faltered in decision-making. These small victories, imperceptible to the Tau, coalesced into a network that slowed expansion across critical sectors. Every faltering heartbeat of obedience was a weapon, and every manipulated choice was a strike against the greater good's relentless efficiency. Even as victories accumulated, the moral weight pressed on us. Every act of orchestration had consequences, and each life affected reminded us that survival in this sector was not measured in numbers alone. Garen, tense and silent, reminded me that these victories were built on fragile human choice. We guide, we manipulate, but at what cost? He asked. I had no easy answer, only the grim acknowledgement that in war, morality and survival are perpetually intertwined. The greater good began to respond. Fire warriors adapted, Patrols became more disciplined, and ethereal advisors probed deeper for anomalies. Yet human unpredictability, carefully nurtured, proved resilient. Hesitation, moral doubt, and the faint spark of courage combined into a network of defiance that the Tau could not fully control. Our subtle war continued not with bolter fire or plasma blasts, but through thought, choice, and conscience. As the sector's night fell, the weight of moral calculus became tangible. Survival required not only strategy, but an acute awareness of the consequences of influence. Every choice, every whispered suggestion, every act of hesitation was a battlefield. The greater good may expand relentlessly, yet human will unpredictable, fragile, and morally weighted remained a force they could not fully dominate. In the quiet of space, the seeds of resistance endured, growing silently beneath the shadow of alien precision. The sector's resistance had begun to take shape, but its fragility was ever apparent. Each act of hesitation, each faltering decision, carried a weight that could tip the balance of entire systems. Civilian operators delayed transmissions, administrators questioned orders, and minor insurgent cells hesitated before acting, unsure whether courage or compliance would save them. Every choice, subtle though it was, became a weapon and a moral burden simultaneously. I walked the command deck, the hum of the frigate beneath my feet a reminder of the stakes. Lyra's psychic presence traced the intricate network of hesitation, highlighting both opportunities and points of danger. The greater the uncertainty, the greater the advantage, she whispered. But every action leaves its mark. The cost is never abstract. I absorbed the truth of her words. Each decision shaped outcomes, lives, and the sector's very survival. Lieutenant Merrick's reports confirmed the impact of our orchestration. Minor supply hubs faltered under subtle sabotage. Patrols hesitated at choke points, and whispers of defiance spread among human settlements. The Tau's expansion slowed, but their countermeasures grew more precise. They adapted where they could, probing for anomalies and reinforcing key points. Yet the human element unpredictable, morally conscious, hesitant remained the ultimate wild card. Even as subtle victories accumulated, the consequences were evident. Civilians faced fear, soldiers wrestled with doubt, and my acolytes carried the weight of manipulation. Garen's voice broke through the tension. We are shaping lives they cannot see. Are we heroes or orchestrators of unseen suffering? I did not respond immediately. In this war, survival demanded moral clarity, strategic subtlety, and an acceptance of the unavoidable consequences of influence. The web of hesitation spread across sectors like a living organism. Each faltering heartbeat of choice reinforced the network, making the Tau respond defensively. Supply convoys were rerouted, patrols delayed, and administrative chains disrupted. These invisible victories, though small individually, combined into a force the Tau could not fully predict or suppress. In a galaxy where absolute order seemed supreme, human unpredictability, moral choice, hesitation, courage proved more potent than any weapon. Night fell across the planets, silent but alive with tension. The greater good continued its relentless expansion, yet each minor faltering of obedience was a crack in their armor. The moral calculus of survival weighed heavily on all of us. Every action, every guided hesitation, was a choice that carried consequence. And in this fragile network of resistance, human will persisted, unyielding beneath the shadow of alien precision. The fragile network of hesitation had grown into a force capable of shaping outcomes. Across the sector, human unpredictability, carefully guided and strategically amplified, began to impose itself upon the relentless expansion of the Tau. Supply chains staggered under delayed decisions, patrols faltered at critical junctions, and minor insurgent cells executed subtle sabotage. What had started as isolated hesitation had coalesced into an invisible, yet potent, form of resistance. From the bridge of the cloaked frigate, I monitored the unfolding events with keen focus. Lyra's psychic presence traced patterns of doubt, courage, and moral choice, highlighting areas where intervention could amplify resistance without detection. Each hesitation can cascade, she warned, the tower precise, but human will is unpredictable. Every spark of defiance has the potential to ignite greater disruption. I nodded, acknowledging the delicate balance between strategy and morality that had defined this campaign. Lieutenant Merrick relayed fragmented reports. A supply convoy rerouted itself at a critical choke point. A patrol paused mid-route to reassess orders, and administrators in a planetary hub delayed crucial communications. Each act was minor on its own, yet together, they forced the Tau into reactive maneuvers. They could no longer dictate the pace of expansion with certainty. The greater good, disciplined and relentless, found itself challenged by hesitation it could neither anticipate nor fully suppress. Even among my acolytes, the weight of responsibility pressed heavily. Every decision to guide human choice carried ethical implications. Every delay, every carefully whispered doubt, affected lives in ways impossible to measure. Garen, tense and vigilant, reminded me that subtlety did not absolve us of consequence. Each hesitation we inspire is a gamble, he said. We steer lives, yet the outcome is never certain. I accepted this reality. In this war of minds, precision and conscience were inseparable. Across the sector, the human network of resistance began to show tangible effects. Supply chains staggered, patrols hesitated, and insurgent activity disrupted routine operations. The Tau responded with recalibrated strategies, but human unpredictability, hesitation, doubt, courage remained an element they could not fully control. In a galaxy dominated by disciplined expansion, these small victories proved the enduring strength of human agency. As night fell across planetary surfaces, a quiet tension prevailed. The battle had shifted from bolter fire and plasma blasts to hesitation, moral choice, and guided defiance. Survival depended on the careful orchestration of human will, the precise amplification of doubt, and the moral courage to navigate the consequences of influence. And in the shadowed war, the tide was beginning to turn. The sector was no longer merely a passive stage for the Tau's expansion. Every faltering heartbeat of human hesitation had begun to dictate the tempo of events. Supply hubs staggered under delays, patrols paused mid-route, and insurgent cells moved with quiet precision. The greater good faced an unpredictable battlefield, one where human choice and moral courage disrupted the most carefully laid plans. Each act of hesitation, each subtle defiance, became a weapon more potent than bolter fire or railgun strike. From the shadowed command deck, I traced the network of defiance. Lyra's psychic presence illuminated hesitation like a web of delicate threads, showing where a small push could ripple across multiple systems. The tower precise, disciplined, relentless, she murmured. But human unpredictability, doubt, fear, courage cannot be quantified. Each faltering node strengthens the network. I absorbed her words, knowing that survival in this sector demanded both strategy and conscience in equal measure. Lieutenant Merrick reported further successes. Minor rebellions in industrial sectors disrupted logistical flows. Administrators questioned orders at critical junctures, and patrols hesitated under uncertainty. These subtle victories, invisible to the Tau, forced their forces into defensive recalibrations, stretching them thin across a vast and unpredictable network. Their precision, once absolute, was now tempered by the chaos of human choice. Even as the sector's resistance grew, the moral burden weighed heavily. Every manipulated hesitation carried consequences for civilians, soldiers, and my acolytes alike. Garen voiced the lingering tension. We steer lives, but who bears the cost of every falter? I knew the answer. Ours was the responsibility for guiding defiance while preserving life, for shaping outcomes without tipping the scales toward unnecessary suffering. It was a delicate balance, the fulcrum of survival in a galaxy dominated by forces indifferent to morality. The first signs of tangible impact became evident. Supply lines staggered, patrols were rerouted, and minor insurgencies disrupted the rhythm of expansion. The Tau adapted, but human hesitation was a force they could not fully suppress. In this invisible war, patience, strategy, and moral courage became our sharpest weapons. The tide was turning, not through open battle, but through the careful orchestration of choice, fear, and courage, of subtle rebellion that rippled across the stars. In the cold silence of space, the sector held its breath. The greater good continued to expand, yet the pattern of human unpredictability persisted. Hesitation, moral reflection, and courage had become the instruments of survival. And in these invisible currents, a fragile, enduring hope began to emerge, a hope that even under relentless alien precision, human agency could bend the tide of war. The fragile network of human hesitation had begun to dictate outcomes across the sector. Supply lines staggered, patrols faltered, and minor insurgent activity disrupted the Tau's carefully orchestrated expansion. What had begun as isolated moments of doubt and courage now formed a cohesive, invisible resistance, shaping the fate of entire worlds. Survival was not achieved through open combat, but through patience, subtlety, and the careful orchestration of choice. From the command deck of the cloaked frigate, I watched as the patterns unfolded. Lyra's psychic presence traced hesitation, doubt, and courage, illuminating points of leverage across the sector. Even the smallest act of defiance can ripple across systems. She reminded me, the greater good cannot predict the unpredictable. Each faltering node strengthens human resolve. I knew she spoke truth. The survival of worlds now depended on the moral courage of individuals, guided carefully to resist without exposing themselves. Lieutenant Merrick's reports confirmed the effect of our orchestrations. Minor supply convoys were delayed, fire warrior patrols hesitated, and administrative nodes faltered under subtle pressure. The Tau, precise and relentless, found themselves reacting to human unpredictability rather than dictating the pace of expansion. Their expansion slowed, their network strained, and the once unassailable precision of the greater good wavered. Yet even as victories accumulated, the weight of moral responsibility pressed upon us. Every faltering heartbeat of obedience was a triumph, but each carried the potential for suffering. Civilians, soldiers, and my acolytes bore the consequences of our guidance. Garen's voice, quiet but tense, reminded me, We steer lives, yet the cost of hesitation is always counted in flesh and fear. Survival demanded clarity, precision, and an acceptance of the inevitable moral burden. Across the sector, the network of human defiance solidified. Hesitation became strategy, moral courage became a weapon, and subtle rebellion dictated the pace of events. The Tau adapted where possible, but the human element, the unpredictable interplay of doubt, courage, and moral choice remained beyond their control. In a galaxy dominated by precision and order, the resilience of human agency proved enduring. Night fell across planets scarred by years of conflict, yet the quiet tension of survival persisted. The greater good continued its expansion, but the invisible battle of minds, choices, and moral courage had turned the tide. In the shadows of alien precision, human defiance endured, proving that even in the darkest corners of the galaxy, survival was possible not through force, but through subtlety, conscience, and the careful orchestration of human will. The final movements of resistance unfolded with quiet precision. Across the sector, supply chains staggered, patrols hesitated, and insurgent cells executed subtle disruptions. The Tau, disciplined and relentless, found themselves reacting instead of dictating. Their expansion slowed, delayed by hesitation, doubt, and the moral courage of those who resisted without fanfare. Victory was not measured in battlefield carnage, but in the imperceptible victories of choice. From the bridge, I observed the results of months of subtle orchestration. Lyra's psychic awareness highlighted pockets of human resilience, the invisible nodes, where courage and hesitation intertwined to form an unseen lattice of defiance. The greater good meets resistance it cannot fully predict, she whispered. Even the smallest spark can ignite change. Each faltering decision, each delayed command, each whispered doubt had accumulated into a network capable of shaping the course of worlds. Lieutenant Merrick's final reports confirmed the magnitude of the effect. Industrial hubs delayed production, patrols rerouted mid-mission, and administrative nodes faltered repeatedly under moral uncertainty. Minor insurgencies disrupted local logistics, forcing the Tau to reconsider their precise strategy. For the first time, human unpredictability dictated the tempo of expansion, challenging the absolute order of the greater good. Even in the quiet of victory, the moral weight endured. Every manipulated choice carried consequence. Civilians bore subtle anxiety. Soldiers wrestled with doubt, and acolytes carried the responsibility of influence. Garen's gaze met mine. Unspoken questions reflected in the tension of his stance. We survive, but at what cost to the souls we guide? I did not answer aloud. In the shadows of alien expansion, morality and survival were inseparably entwined. As the sector settled into a precarious balance, the greater good remained a looming threat. Disciplined and relentless, yet slowed by the human network of hesitation. Survival had been achieved not by open confrontation, but through strategy, subtlety, and moral courage. In the quiet darkness of space, amidst planets scarred by conflict and hesitation, human agency endured. Even under the shadow of the Tau's unyielding expansion, choice, conscience, and courage had proved stronger than precision. In the end, survival was not defined by the absence of danger, but by the endurance of will. The network of hesitation, carefully nurtured and morally weighed, had altered the fate of worlds. The greater good's expansion was not halted, but it had been tempered, delayed, and challenged. And in the shadows of this imperceptible war, human defiance, subtle yet potent, persisted, a testament to the enduring spark of resilience in a galaxy dominated by forces beyond comprehension.